Welcome, 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 brother. Welcome back to the Rose Garden. How are you?
Good, sister. How are you?
Happy Thursday. I'm so happy we are together in the Rose Garden because
Same here. It's a
uh,
pleasure to be here with you.
it has been a day and a week and a minute for me. I don't know about you.
Yeah. I mean, it's a lot. It's been a lot cracking this week, and all levels,
Yes.
personal, professional, all that stuff. It's been pushing me to, once again, evolve. It's a continuous process of growth and evolution. I
Yes.
embrace it completely.
I hear you. Well, welcome everybody else who's joined us live in the Rose Garden. We had a wonderful time last week with, I don't want to mess
Also, Infadishi Tayari Cassell. What a
so
special treat he was,
what a treat he was, and who knew that he was a magician and could dance? I think people learned a lot about him that we didn't necessarily know before, and I'm ready
Mhm.
for those dance moves, and I'm excited to say that next week we're going to be joined by some a meaningful guest. And then the following week we will be too. But this week it's just you and I, and enjoy our time. That's actually how the Rose Garden started. Was you and I on Thursdays chatting it up, mostly about all things work, business, and then it all of a sudden turned into some afternoon therapy for us both. So we're glad that people are here with us and that we get to do this in honor of grandma.
Yeah.
I made a post last week. This is now our 23rd episode. So that means for 23 straight weeks or so, except the week I forgot that it was a Thursday. We've been hanging out together and dropping some gems. But I think we have a really meaningful topic today to discuss that I think is going to be important for everybody who's listening, and that's about intimate partner violence. Something that I think touches a lot of people. And there's many faces to it. And what brought us to this topic, I think, are really more personal examples and personal explorations of this, not with necessarily ourselves, but with people we're connected to. And so I think it's a good place to start today to talk about some of that, the reality that that's an actual thing, and that there's many faces and many forms of intimate partner violence. And let's dig into it.
Yeah, let's dive into it. So first of all, in terms of definitions, so people can know what we're talking about. I know that intimate partner violence is the current name for it, but it used to be domestic violence, right? And, it's funny because I think sometimes typically when you start thinking about um, intimate partner violence, I mean, that's a big word. We would call it like IPV. So, you automatically think male and female, like the man is doing something to abuse a woman. But then there's some times that the male is actually the one that's being abused. I saw that recently with the president of France,
Hmm.
Macron, where
Hmm.
his wife had mushed him in the face, and they caught that. And obviously, some more things probably underlying behind that, but she's a lot older than him. And then there's this other type of violence where the parent and child, whether it's the child doing it to the parent or the parent doing it to the child or whatnot. So there's different types, right? And I think like the most common is, women sharing their stories of the abuse they have endured from men. And, but the other ones are often silent, right? Because, I don't think men are often forthcoming about, any sort of abuse that they're getting from their woman,
And
and let alone,
that's the problem, right? It seems like it's a really big secret. I want to just clarify though. It seems like we're not just talking about intimate partner because that would be people who are in a relationship. You're really expanding this discussion to talk about domestic violence and how that impacts family systems. So the system of the family could be the violence against parent to child or
yeah,
even
yeah.
child to parent, and then the relational aggression that you see with women or even friends and peers, and then you're talking about the folks that are in relationships. But let's pick one because I want to go back to what was your reaction when you saw the president of France be
Macron.
handled?
Well, it was a very so first of all, as you could see, they were on a plane and they were about to you know, get off of the plane, right? And I think that he tried to hide it, he tried to play it off, but that was a very violent mush. in his face, right? You know what
Mhm,
I mean?
mhm.
And then he tried to get her to put her arm in his arm, and she wasn't doing it. So there's definitely was some things going on there, right? But that historically going back, they were saying that she was his teacher, and they had a relationship since he was 15 years old, if I'm not mistaken. So there was some manipulation happening there. She already, I think, at that time
She was older.
y- she was a lot older. At least like 15 years older than him.
Mhm, mhm.
So, and she already had like her kids, and he doesn't have kids with her because of course that's his wife or whatnot. So, long story short, sometimes those things are indicators of bigger things behind it, right? So you can see that, that man is going through it. But I also think like sometimes it don't have to be, it don't have to be physical. It don't have to start off physically, right? But I think it is incremental. It starts off with something that seems innocuous, but your intuition says like, man, this is very weird, you know, where somebody is disrespecting you verbally or something, and they're taking it way too far. Because there's a difference between being upset and disappointed, and then crossing over to being disrespectful to
Or
someone else,
violent.
right?
Like,
Yeah.
I think we can normalize the fact that as humans, we're gonna have emotional reactions, frustrations to things. But when it crosses to line to you putting your hands on me, that's a bigger issue. And in relationships, we often minimize the violence that maybe a woman who is in an intimate relationship would direct towards a man. In fact, men probably get a clown. That's why I asked you, what was your reaction when you saw it? Because it's really no good response to what we saw, right? There was no good reaction that he could have done, but he certainly had some kind of reaction. And so I think here's my thinking about that is being able to as men be open about, your frustrations and what it's like to experience someone who's hostile or harmful to you. But also being women reflecting on the fact that we have had been conditioned or been around social experiences and norms that make that behavior okay. I'm a mom of a son who I love tremendously, and it would itch my behind to have him be harmed by a woman. And my natural reaction as a mama is smack him back, like put
Well, my whole thing is this, right? Even I want to go back to what you said in terms of, yeah, we're human, right? And we get frustrated and we feel all kinds of emotions that, we all can relate to. But that doesn't mean that we get a license to be disrespectful with each other, right? So I think like when you have like a close relationship with somebody, friend, family, or whatever, what have you, you can express any sort of emotion without being disrespectful to them, and aggressive, right? Because I feel like sometimes, first of all, I was telling my daughter, like aggression, begets aggression. So the
yeah.
more, and I think that's for all things and all people, and all creatures for real, right? I was thinking, some lady said she came home and she saw a bear on her porch. A big ass bear sitting on her porch. Now, she said after she saw the bear, she needed a diaper, right? But I'm sure she didn't have any sort of aggressive actions, and so the bear was just looking at her inquisitively, right, while he was relaxing on her porch.
Right.
But just imagine now if, because how Oso said last week when he was talking to us that his dog speaks, and his wife and them had heard it. So his point is that every creature communicates, right?
Right.
Yeah, so every creature understands aggression.
Right.
So just imagine if that lady saw the bear on her porch, and so something was demanded about her, and she started being aggressive towards that bear.
Mhm.
What you think the bear going to do? You
Be aggressive back.
be
And
aggressive back.
that's the principle I think that you're trying to shape is that aggression begets aggression.
Yeah, it does.
What I think you also to highlight is that in the Black and Brown community, that's the way we've been conditioned because we're in a
100%.
threatening environment. So this reaction to aggression has always it's been quite normalized to, smack them back. Like I said, as a mom, my reaction to hearing someone harm my child male or female, is smack them back, right? You got to push these people off you. But we know that that's not the most productive way to resolve conflict. Since we're on that topic, if it's not the most productive way, then what? When do we start introducing more productive ways of handling
Well,
it?
see, I think, like you said, once again, we don't really get any models or any sort of coaching or training on conflict resolution and proper ways to, express these things. And I mean, we find out about them after probably, I mean, after you've done these things a million times the wrong way, and you get all these sorts of detrimental and negative consequences, then you start realizing like, damn, that's not the right way of doing things. But I feel like you can express, like I said, you can express an emotion or feeling without being disrespectful, you
Mhm.
know?
But
And it's just a way of framing it.
you
Like
can
say for instance,
do it.
I have a perfect example of that, a recent one that I
Okay.
went through. So I had just purchased one of these brand new iPhones. So I got sucked into the iPhone version updates or whatever, so I go in there, I get a brand new iPhone. It's a defective iPhone, right? And the defection is basically that any Bluetooth device that connects to it, it doesn't keep the connection. So you gotta keep going through the process of basically repairing it for it to work.
Okay.
So I being technical, I know that this is the problem. Like, there's a hardware problem with this phone.
Right. So
So
what you your brother? It sounds like it created a feeling.
yeah, so first of all, since it's a brand new device that's expensive and all this stuff, I got frustrated, agitated at first, like, what's wrong with this thing? I didn't know what it was. So I thought it was the devices I was connecting to it. So after rounds and rounds of customer support calls and replacing of devices, like 3 or 4 times, replace the devices. So then I go to the Apple store, the Genius Bar, they call it, 4 times, So on my fourth visit there, I'm really irritated. So it's a young Caucasian, guy, working with me on it. And, he worked with me on it every time I came there, you know? So this time I was really frustrated because I knew this was the problem. So what they kept telling me is it's a software issues. If you reset the phone, then that issue will go away, right?
Mhm.
And so I thought that might be so. So it sounded logical to me, right? So I reset the phone. I did this stuff, and resetting the phone really is not. It's not a feature, to be honest. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
Because when you reset the phone, what ends up happening is you lose everything, so you start all over again. You got to log into the apps and everything. So I was angry. So I went in there and I said, can you help me? You know, he's telling me, no, our policy is that, you got to do the software reset. I said, I did the software reset. I did it the way you guys asked me to do it. And it set me back too, by the way. So that's why I'm extra agitated now, right?
Right. Right.
And then, his reaction to it was just nonchalant. So that was further hitting my buttons, right? So I asked him, let me speak to, your manager or supervisor, somebody that has authority to help me. So his reaction to that was, well, they're going to tell you the same thing I did, but, I'll go get them or whatnot. So he got this girl, also a young girl, young Caucasian girl. So she comes up and her attitude was very supportive of her team member. Well, he told me what happened. And, he told you the protocol, and so basically he didn't tell you anything wrong. And then she was like trying to make it seem like I'm wrong. Looked
Mhm.
at my phone to see if I actually did reset it and all that stuff, which I did and all that. So ultimately, I got to this point where I was starting to see red. You know what I mean? So I was getting angry because they're not helping me solve my problem, and they spinning me, and I'm like, man, I'm not going to do. I've done this 3, 4 times. I called technical support. They sent me here. Now y'all trying to send me back to do this stuff. And so, as I was getting angry, I could see it I could feel it happening in my body language. I feel the adrenaline starting to rush up. I see myself, posturing aggressively. These are two young people, so I'm talking to them, looking at them in a way. And now, in that split second of unlimited possibilities of what you can choose to do. You know, I felt myself starting to feel rage. And so in that, I said, you know what? This ain't gonna get me nowhere. It's gonna be a bigger problem. So in that rage, I told him, I expressed it. I was like, I'm very angry. I'm very angry. And I know that this ain't your problem because you're trying to help me. You ain't make this phone yourself or whatever. You ain't create this issue, but I got a problem and I need it fixed. And I'm coming to you guys to help me to get it fixed. And I'm feeling like you're not helping me.
Brother, you know what? I wanna tell you something. You done said that whole long-winded story, and I was, like, thinking you was gonna retch around and smack somebody, put your hands on the counter. So, you must be this developed person that cannot do those things because, and I think that's the point you were trying to get to is that you did some internal work to kinda regulate yourself, but it could have went in an opposite direction, right?
Well, I'm saying that everybody feels the same kind of a way. Cause in my build up, like in my body language and my feeling of rage happening, I can see in them that they're having reactions to it too.
Oh, you
So
saw
they're
them.
trying to be defensive and stuff. And, they're getting a little bit more snarky and whatnot. So they're not, they're not meeting my aggressiveness, but they're still trying to be defensive as well too. So it's escalating, and it's
Yes,
not escalating in a way that is beneficial for either side.
right,
So I'm looking at this and I'm like, man, I'm ready to beat the table, throw some things, do some stuff. And I'm like, but what's that going to get me in here? You
right. But
Yeah,
what you
other
do
than
is a
hmm,
little different than domestic violence because I don't think the nature of domestic violence in itself is just about a dysregulation system. I think the nature of domestic violence is really about control, and I think that's the
yes,
element of it that is a little different than these natural reactions.
totally agree. It's about control, but I guess the point I'm trying to make is inside of a situation, right? You only got control over yourself individually. And see, that's the problem, right? Is that people are trying to manipulate and control others. And when they ain't got a handle on it, it creates like this aggressive thing. So it's a matter of trying to de-escalate, right? Inside of a situation is and truthfully stay focused on what's really going on. Cause I think another thing of what our source causes of this stuff is a combination of things that build up. And then the thing that trips it off, right? Maybe so minor that somebody looking at it would be like, "What? You did that off of that?"
Well, but
Like a piece.
I guess my pushback still would be that that's in the conflict resolution of it all, right? But I think
Yeah.
if we're looking at what is the nature of domestic violence, even when it's like, let's do child to parent, right? Because I
Right.
think that's a
Right.
less talked about type of domestic violence. But child to parent is still, some parents over there getting smacked, because get their kids $10, right? You don't give me $10, and that has
Uh-huh.
nothing to do with a de-escalation point. That really has to do with that child did not get what they wanted. They used aggression in the manner in which it's designed. It's designed to push people back, to scare them, to threaten them, to control and to manipulate them. And then in many instances, the end result is that control and manipulation works. And so I think what's harmful about that is we've created environments where that's okay, right? So, and I'm not saying it's okay like that you know that you're purposefully allowing it, but you've created conditions where that has now been the end result. Most of those kind of violent interactions and domestic aggressions build up to your point and they try on little measures of manipulative control to see how you're going to react and respond.
Yep. I
And
totally
what's
agree.
necessary is for us to build awareness about what that looks like and that it's a part of this cycle of violence and aggression that is a part of domestic violence and that once we understand what that is then we're able to intervene because the intervention really it could be what you're saying some de-escalation skills
Yeah,
boundary
but I think this intervention though also starts from individuals, right? So say for instance between a husband and a wife, for example,
Mhm.
right? If if they got a rhythm between each other, which they will have, right? It's kind of like, let's just say if the husband is upset about something and the wife is badgering him,
Right?
you know, and the husband asks her, please stop. What if he just nicely says stop and the wife decides not to,
Mhm.
right? So now in this situation, just to examine that right there, like you said, it's a control
Mhm.
dynamic in this.
Mhm.
Now the control dynamic in the it's like both sides want a measure of control over something, right? So I feel like it's not a one-sided thing, because all parties involved in a situation have culpability in it, right? So like a wife can de-escalate by simply abiding by the request, right? He said he don't want to talk about it no more. We won't talk about it. But most time, people ego and pride ain't gonna let them do that, right? Because they feel like, well, I don't have the control. He told me to shut up. I shut up, and that makes me feel powerless. So I'm gonna keep on going. You know. Now in doing this, this is escalating. This is a situation, right? And I feel like in the end of it, if the husband is more aggressive and does something or whatever that is outside of bounds, he looks like the bad guy, right?
I still think you're looking at it in the sense of what the true intent. Like I hear you, but I want to help condition your brain a little bit to suggest that there are some people who are far more intentional than what you are describing. What you're describing
Yeah, I agree. I agree.
this
I
reactive
agree.
approach
But
to conflict, and that's
but
not
I wanna
what I'm
I
talking about.
wanna make sure you know that it's not like when I'm describing the thing, it's not everything. We don't have enough time to talk about all the things that there are, right? So what we're trying to do is in general, like summarize some key points inside of things that are common to every conflict, right? Because let's just say if we talking about intimate partner violence, right?
Mhm.
That only can take place between two people. And I do believe that two people inside of that situation, they do affect the outcome of it, right? So the parties that are involved. So if they're both conscious, then I feel like they're equipped with de-escalation skills, then they could, resolve any type of conflict without it getting there, right?
About what if the goal is not ever about resolution? I think
Yeah, I feel that.
if the goal is not ever about resolution, then what you are describing is not an approach. And I think that I think what I'm hearing from you is there are domestic situations that happen that is
Hmm.
conflict. And some
Uh-huh.
conflict can accelerate and exacerbate to be a domestic violence situation that was not the same part of like the abuse control cycle that I'm talking about. And so I think there are two distinctions. And I think that to your point, if you have a situation that has gotten out of hand, that has gotten accelerated into some kind of escalated conflict, there are points within that where de-escalation strategies and communication strategies and boundary setting are just wonderful tools. But there are certain types of behavioral aggression that, if we're going to call it what I think most people are hearing us frame it as, intimate partner aggression, domestic violence, all those strategies in the world are not going to change.
Why not? Because like let's just say for example, right? Because I would say like in this thing, I don't believe that, it's a certain type of outcome that needs to happen, right? Which I would say obviously is the safety of both parties. Is
Right.
the the optimal outcome, right? The safety of both parties. Now I do think that there's some, well, I can only call it as conflicts, right? Because that's the only way, disagreement, conflicts, or whatever, control dynamics, whatever you want to call it. But I'll just summarize it as conflicts that are something that neither side is willing to give up on. They're not going to give any ground on. So in those situations, to your point, an outcome still needs to happen though. So
Dear brother,
regardless of it, so
you're exposing for me is that my dear brother's mind cannot think like an abuser because you are still thinking in this rational discourse of an exchange and reaction. Abuse is not that rational and it's not that system. It is intended. So I think that's the difference. The distinction behind abuse and domestic abuse is that it's intended to be controlling and to withhold access or limit or control someone else. What you're describing is conflict, and I think conflict is a natural part of the human
So
experience.
so let so
And
so let me ask you this question
I'm
on
so
what you're
happy that
saying there.
you're not an abuser.
Well, let's say I appreciate that. I mean, some people might not agree. So
But
what I would say
say
to you
that
is this
about
though, right? Is to me, right? Let's just say let's use what you just described, right? The control dynamic. So let's just say the people who colonize places in the world, they have an agenda. They want to come and take over it, right?
they're abused.
And they are abusers, right?
Right.
But they conflict with the people that are indigenous, right? So the indigenous people are already here. They already living here. Now they have an invader, an outsider that's coming in to basically take over, to abuse them, right? So the question is that a conflict or not?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
So when I say conflict, that's what I mean is that there's a point where it clashes, right?
Mhm.
Now it's a conflict. Now it's a irreconcilable conflict because the invader wants something that the indigenous people are really rightfully not willing to give up,
Oh, dear,
right?
you still struggling with listen, I get it.
So tell me where this is where we're missing each other because I feel like it,
We're not missing each other. I think the
I see.
problem is sometimes you just so smart, you dumb in the sense that I get that there's conflict and there's conflict you got to react to conflict.
So what are you saying?
I want you to conceptualize that is think of someone who is deliberately like so get put yourself in the
So
mind of
in that example, is that not deliberate that colonizers like say right now, if I come to your house, it's not my house, right?
right?
I come to your house. I knock on the door with the intent of doing a home invasion. You have no clue. I'm a stranger to you. You have no I'm an abuser, right?
Yes,
I'm
you're
about to come and do a home invasion and ain't no telling what kind of level I'm trying to take that at, right?
yes.
So the people inside of that house, when they come to address me, right? At
Right?
that point in time, it's a conflict, right? And
Perhaps they may
it's a
not
incident
yes.
converging on something that's
Okay,
a
go.
conflict,
Okay,
right?
go.
So now, so we agree to that, right?
We're
But I agree with what you're saying that there's nuances in conflict. Sometimes there's innocent conflicts, somebody tripped over you. They didn't mean anything by that. They weren't trying to abuse you, but you didn't understand why they tripped over you. They didn't say, excuse me. So now that's created something that's different. But I understand where it's an intentional, malfeasance in this where my heart is to create harm to you, you
yes.
know?
And
Yeah.
in
And so
domestic
now,
scenarios,
but
that's problematic. In relationships that are intimate partners, families, friendships, that's deeply problematic because to have any element of control in those types of relationships make that relationship non-functional.
100%. So now inside of that though, right? The moment where that clash and conflicts happen, there's a lot of ways that this can be dealt with, right? Like for instance, in that home invasion situation, y'all could just hope that hope comply and hope that they are magnanimous and just come in and leave, whatever, and nobody gets hurt. You could hope for that. The likelihood is that's not a good way of dealing with it, right?
Right.
But even the art of war says that, the optimal intent is to take an army whole without any lives lost, right? So there's a way that you could defend yourself without any real loss happening, you know?
Well,
So
get
technically
the hell
speaking,
out of there. If you in an
yeah,
abusive situation, let's
yeah,
just make this plain because you making it too smart. This is a too smart discussion for us. And
right, right.
you're losing me because what I think is the element to what you're trying to say is yes, there's lots of reactions that can happen. But at the core of this is these are unhealthy situations and scenarios. And when they happen, the recognition of them being unhealthy is one key and critical. And then two, get the hell out of those situations because
What if it's not that easy? Because I would say that every situation, 90%, well, I would venture to say this 99.99% of all intimate relationships have this in there.
I lost your speaker. And I don't know, and that was look at God. God took you away from
Yeah,
saying
I
something.
got another phone call. I don't know why, but I'm just basically trying to say that every relationship has this, right?
An
Like
element of what?
an element of a situation. Like put it this way, you tell me if I'm wrong,
Mhm.
right? So every situation, I would query 100 couples, and I guarantee you, out of 100 couples, there was some sort of incident that the outside observer and the people inside could look at it as that was kind of violent. The man grabbed me and shook me. He did something aggressive. He smacked me. She slapped me. She did something. She mushed me in my face like Macron did. Got mushed on the plane. So every
So
relationship kind of has these things in it.
because you and I are in relationship, we're siblings. We never smacked each other or
Yeah, 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 yeah. There's been some. We have not done nothing of that degree, but but I'm just trying to say there's things like
armed.
that inside of situations that these types of things happen. So it's not so easy to say, just get out of it. It's not so easy to say that.
And yes, it is easy to say you can get out of violence. It's like
And
you situating yourself. So I'm gonna if whatever woman that's not sharing your cloth was over there beating the hell out of you, and I observed it, and you were honest about the fact that you were getting beaten the hell out of, and that
Mhm.
you were getting manhandled, I would be pointing out that that's not an evolved way or protective or safe way for you to be in relationship with this person. And if that person cannot recognize their harm and you don't recognize the harm's way you're in, then I would be helping you to understand that you need to get out of that circumstance.
But you understand as a wife that it ain't so easy to extricate yourself out of a situation. It sounds good. It sounds good. Like, these types of things fundamentally, it's all true. What you're saying is true. The optimal outcome of this thing is if it gets there. Because to me, in my personal point of view, right, certain thresholds or boundaries get crossed, the relationship over anyway.
Correct.
So the whatever was prior to that threshold being crossed, it ain't never going to be that anymore, right?
Right. Right.
And I believe that the offender, the abuser, may be apologetic about it and try to fix it, but each incident subsequently is going to get worse and worse. It's going to escalate on their side, but till eventually it's going to be a real devastatingly tragic end. So I do agree that the optimal thing is to get out of it, but the truth is there's a lot of things that sometimes keep people pinned in. One of them is economics,
Yeah.
right?
Yes, that's
Yeah, I have no other place to go,
right. Right.
and all this stuff. So that if you're in a situation economically where you've, kind of imprisoned yourself, right?
Mhm.
It's hard to just get out of it. Then
Right.
also,
It
it
is.
could be other things like, I could get out, but, I'm going to leave some other people that'll be here. So maybe it'd be better if I'm here to try to shield these other people. So there's some nuances in it. So it ain't really a simple thing of like I can just back out of this thing,
And I agree with that. I think
Yeah,
I oversimplified it, but and I think that it's good that you highlight that there's a lot of dynamics that keep people in patterns and cycles of abuse, but
no
that
doubt.
does not stop the education that's needed and the conversations that's needed. Like literally, if we go back to the Macron thing, there would be some people who said that that was okay because she was a woman. And I think that's the harmful part of it. Not okay that if the way you get your partner's attention or whatever is to smack them, then that's not, okay. right? Or
Now,
the
why is it not okay though? Because like right now, to expand on what you're saying, it's not okay because we're supposed to have equality in this current modern age, right? So the same way that she pushed him in his face like that, if we all equal, he should be able to push her in her face like that, which it would cause a real uproar if he had to did that,
Well, see, and
right?
that's see what you just highlighted is this cultural dynamic that I think a lot of black people are raised in is like,
Mhm.
eye for an eye, you hit me, I'm gonna hit you back. And what I would say is that to me is an approach that normalizes violence within relationships. And we should
Well,
break
what I'm saying is to be clarified though, it's not an eye for an eye thing. I'm just saying that you're right. The whole thing shouldn't be tolerable,
right.
right? So there should be some rules to this,
Right.
right?
Right.
One rule is this: you never put your hands on me.
People.
You know, like when we was growing up, it was I don't know who taught us this, but it was sticks and stones.
Break
You know what I'm saying?
words
But
with them.
words won't ever hurt me. So as long as you don't put your hands on me, we good. You can say whatever you want to, whatever. But you put your hands on me, then that's created the threshold.
A really good approach. Like we should not and I don't know that we're teaching that in the same rhythm because again, I've heard parents, even I've been a victim of this where I'm like, that boy hit you, you hit them back kind of
Right, right.
and don't really encourage any conflict resolution. So no, you're right. I think the reality is we are in some way conditioned to be in a very aggressive society and to have aggressive interaction patterns, but we can indeed acknowledge that and try to work hard to break that because
100%.
is that like and this is true for any race, right? But I'm going to say black people because I'm black, that black people really have a hard time managing conflict. Like a bump on the subway can result in death. You know what I
Right,
mean?
right,
Or
right.
losing a basketball game has resulted in death. And I think that we're much more sophisticated than that, and we don't talk about problem solving and conflict resolution. There are real skills that you can do and enact to use your words de-escalate conflict. And there are people who are trained to do that. We don't talk about that. We don't really teach parenting skills around that. We're not really introduced to it even in school. The only thing we tell people, which I think really needs to change, is make sure you tell an adult. And that really bothers that's like a problematic approach because what happens is we have this idea that adults actually know what the hell to do and they don't know. Like there's no just because you're an adult don't make you a master problem solver and you got all this judgment and insight. It really should be tell someone that you have seen that can influence the situation in a meaningful way, not just any kind of like, oh, playground helper, this kid punched me in the back.
Yeah, that's not equipping you with the means to be able to survive out here in the world where there's other major conflicts, right? So I totally agree with you.
And you
I
need
mean,
to assess your environment. Like, I think the other thing is we don't assess our environment really well to know threats and to understand what is threatening. And so, like again, the teaching of these skills is what's really missing, and even the kind of family community bonding around these skills. Like, we have to be more committed to not wanting to harm each other in any kind
yeah,
of and I don't know that
yeah.
we've all taken that commitment. There's a huge uptick right now on like these platforms, social media, things like that, where we're taking harm to like the next level where oh everybody throw your family member away if they don't listen to you. And I don't think that was the spirit of these types of boundary settings that people were talking about where you may need to cut off a family member. It's not because they haven't done what you wanted them to do. It's because there's some real indicator of threat and harm,
Yeah, some extremes.
from extremes. And so that's I think the problem is we are living in a very reactive society. We are normalizing violence and aggression. And particularly among Black people, we have no resource. And a part of that having no resource is like feeling like we're being acted upon instead of we are acting on situations. And one of the things I loved about Oso last week is, he talks about how he changed and acted on the environment everywhere he went, right? I'm the smaller of the fighters, but I'm going to fight the biggest one. That was really him acting on it's terrible that I use a fighting example when I'm trying to say, let's not
Right,
fight.
right.
That was that he's trained in that tradition, and I don't know that he's the person that's pursuing a fight, but that was really meaningful to me, that he saw himself in where he was positioned in the world as somebody who could upon his world and not just be acted upon in the world. And I think that's meaningful. It's a place of strength. And again, I celebrate that as something that we can do, even in like very hostile, threatening situations.
I agree. I honestly feel like, it's a thing called self-control, right? And internal power.
Right.
Our grandmother used to be referring to it as like self-esteem, So inside of this, I feel because the fundamental things that, cause this stuff is just, like you said before, this internal narrative that's looping in your mind about your own image, right? And then, you possibly feeling powerless and trying to regain some sort of power and control. And then, really, right? Effective communication. And these are the fundamental things that, you got to really tap into, right? Because I feel like, with Oso, for example, in terms of his internal power, he's trained up himself in the martial arts in a way that he's confident he can defend himself against anybody, right? So he is physically a threat if he
Mhm.
wants to be, if he chooses to be. So knowing that internally, like, I have power, it gives you a sort of like control over a situation where you could choose to do something as powerful as walk away,
Right.
right?
Right.
Yeah,
And that's
to
a
preserve.
meaningful, ooh, that's just a meaningful point, is that I own my own position of power and I have
Exactly.
and walking away can be powerful, because I don't think that people see these walking away or ignoring. There's a intervention that you do with young kids when they're being bullied. You call it planned ignore. And I swear it does not hit little kids' ears well, because
Right, right.
they're like, I can't keep ignoring that person that's swatting at me or calling me fat or whatever. And then, but what we know from a conditioning perspective is people do the things that like they know are going to push your buttons. And so planned ignore, if situated in the right context, it really can control the outcome. And I think that, as I'm listening to even just how you kind of reshaped it for myself, I'm going to say, look at you taking back your power in that, and letting and defining for yourself what is influencing you and what is annoying versus someone else defining how it's annoying or how it's influencing.
100%. And then also like understanding, because I think in terms of the communication, the point of communication is for both sides to understand each other.
Yeah.
I
Yes.
had an incident when I was in like middle school. And at this time in middle school, we was getting lunch from the school. You know what I'm saying? Because that'll tell you a lot about our situation and shit, right?
And I'm very proud of my humble beginnings.
Yeah,
Okay.
me too,
I'm
me
very,
too.
them pizzas was hitting on Friday.
And the big old cookies, you know.
Real cookies. Wait a minute, chocolate milk was a delight. I don't know about y'all, but y'all people had to pay for that chocolate milk, and I
Yeah,
just
you ain't
put my
lying in the
number in.
carton.
It hit that hits a little different when you get it. You just got to put your number in, and it hits different. But go ahead.
Yeah, but I remember I got the tray, I was in the line, I was getting the food and everything. It was somebody behind me, and he kept bumping into me, you know. And it was so frequent that I just thought like, man, this is intentional. You know what I mean? So without asking, what was the problem and all this old stuff, I just turned around and I violently pushed him. And the dude fell on the ground and everything, did a nice little roll and got back up and just kept it moving, right? And this a security guard. I mean, he was a popular security. I think his name was Sam or something, but he's a black dude. He saw me do this. And he came up to me and he said, "Man, I saw what you did." And he was like, that dude has one leg. That's why he's bumping you like that. He was like in an accident or whatnot, and he got like a prosthetic leg, so he's unstable. He was like, instead of doing what you did, you should be looking out for him. And so that always stuck with me because I realized that sometimes people are doing things and you might take it as being disrespectful or like stepping over a boundary or something like that. But I didn't even give him an opportunity to ask him why. Like, why you keep bumping me like that?
And that's
I could have did
that
I
is
could have just simply did that instead of doing what I did, you
right.
know?
And
So,
understanding, like, I love that, like, getting to the understanding. Well, brother, our time is almost coming to an end, and it wouldn't be our show if I didn't put you on the spot. And, since you always try to use all this wisdom and
wow.
words and, you're my IT, prince, um, king, we gonna play
Mhm.
it's kinda like a $10,000 pyramid, but you have to guess and why is or $100,000 pyramid. I done reduced the amount, okay?
Yeah, I'd rather get that 100 stack.
You
Give me that bag.
want the bag, you want the bag. So, there are 3 categories that you get to choose from, okay? And in those categories, if you guess the item correctly, you get a certain dollar amount. And, you could be coming up with these games, but since you don't come up with the games,
Got you.
I
Imma
got
get you on the next one.
you gonna get me on the next one.
Yeah, yeah, I got you on the next one.
I get to be the game show host. And so here's your categories. And this really is going to teach all of us, ladies and gentlemen, how much my brother knows about his environment. How The first category is things you find in a bathroom, type of fruit, and things that are black and white.
I'll go with things that are black and white for 100 stacks.
And knowing my brother, I knew you would possibly go to the things that were black and white. All right, so here's your first one because you don't get to 100 stacks first. You start with $1,000. So let's see if you can at least earn this $1,000 and get to your 100 stacks that you want. But hold on, I lost my screen with the questions. I have them committed to memory. All right, are you ready?
I'm ready, I'm ready.
So I am a statement.
A black and white statement, an opinion.
I am in a statement. What do you need more? I stand out in a crowd of letters.
I'm a statement. I'm an exclamation point. I'm a period. I'm a what? I stand out in a crowd of letters.
Stand out in a crowd of letters.
I don't know. I'm drawing a blank on this. Can I call a lifeline?
You want to call a life? A lifeline? You gonna call? Who you
All
gonna
right,
call?
tell me another hint. Give me
Okay,
another hint.
this is the last hint that I have. So I am a statement. I stand out in a crowd of letters. Parts of me have subjects and predicates.
Sentence,
It's kind of a sentence that's
paragraph,
bigger than a paragraph.
article,
I am a
paragraph,
story.
a story. Okay.
I am a I don't know if you kinda got the spirit, but I don't know if how about I give you $100 for that?
That's a lot less, but I'll take it. I'll take the $100 and
But
let's level up.
I feel like you were in the spirit of what was it, but, I would have thought you would have gotten it, but you when I
That story, that's off of them things. I want to know if who else got that off of, off of those few
well, I
clues,
got this off the internet. So the
those
internet
fews and twos clues. I got to expand my awareness. All right,
I am automatic. I am automatic, sorry. It's
that's
still
a black and white statement. I need some more than that.
Are you saying it's
Anything
a
could be
black and white
automatic.
statement? Is that your answer?
No, no, no. I'm just saying we
Oh, yeah,
still in the
I am
black and white
automatic.
topic. Okay.
It's still black and white. I am automatic.
Uh-huh.
I occur in the mind. You need more?
Yeah. What's the third one? I'm gonna take them all down so I can see the whole picture first.
I am automatic. I occur in the mind. I can be resolved.
Thought.
You're a thought, a black and
Yeah,
white thought. How'd you
yeah,
know?
yeah.
How'd
I
you
don't know. It just came to me like a thought.
so that
Just automatically occurred in the mind playing with you.
was 5,000. So we add 5,000 to your what did we give you? 100
Five
or
fifty one hundred,
you got
50
5,100?
100. That sound good.
Well, look, we don't have time for our last one because it's almost the end. But you did.
Drop it. See, drop it. See, we can get it in.
You think we can do it? Okay.
Let's try. Just give me all three up front.
Okay. I am made of rubber.
Tire.
A tire. You got that one.
Yeah.
What? that one should have been I think that one should have been the 1,000 that one should have been the $1,000 question, don't you think? Because that was too
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That
that
was
was
easy.
too easy. I didn't make this up. Imma make it hard.
Should have been that's the one for the whole stack, the 100,000 stack. That was 100,000 plus 5,000, right? I'm
Well,
playing with you.
you're at 10,000 there, so you got 10,000 plus 5,000 plus a 100, so what are you at? 15? 5,100?
1,100.
So you didn't do too
Yeah, I take it. Yeah, that wasn't bad. I'll take that.
you'll take that, you'll take that. I am made of rubber was just too easy. And you know what? You didn't disappoint because I figured you'd get of the 3 questions, you got 2 of the 3, so you did
Yeah, I'm mad about the story though. I'm gonna have to get my game up. I gotta do mental push-ups and pull-ups and sit-ups to get my mind right.
right. Well, I think what the the first one, I am a statement, probably threw you off a little bit because it was suggesting it was one statement,
Right, right,
or
right,
it can
right,
make
right.
many statements. So
I'm
I
multiple statements,
yeah,
yeah,
it's that so
together
that could have that
in a crowd.
but it said it was a part of in a crowd of
It was
letters.
just their words, the letters. Yeah,
Yeah,
I'm
so
stand out in a crowd of letters. I'm like, okay, whatever.
so it was good. It was good. Look at
Yeah, yeah,
you.
yeah,
You don't disappoint
yeah,
me with your mind. So, brother, I love every week hanging in the rose garden with you.
yeah. Same here.
The time goes so fast and I feel like I learned so much. I did learn a lot about you. Like I think you really do struggle with this abusive profile. You want to and you're really going into all these resolution skills. So that teaches me a lot about how you are situated in relationships. But that doesn't mean everybody around you is. And so maybe what you could do is continue to be an exemplar for those who really struggle with the concepts that you talked about. And I was so happy to hear that you didn't just smack that Apple person.
Well,
That was coming.
well, I guess for the sake of you know, empowering people, the very first thing is just awareness. I feel like they got to know that they are in an abusive situation, and you're in an abusive situation if somebody is doing something to you that you don't desire. You know what I mean? If
Mhm.
somebody is putting their hands on you and you don't desire that, if they treating you a certain kind of a way and you don't desire that, and they any spectrum of abuse that you getting that you've been trying to give voice to that you don't want, and a person is not respecting that, then you in an abusive situation.
Yes, you are.
You need to know it, and then after having that kind of awareness, you need to know what kind of things you can do about it. You So I feel like we gotta empower people with those things.
We do. And your dear nieces joined the live on Instagram and they're saying they our face, but that is a problem with our studio, so we will fix it. And thank you, dear niece, for letting us know that you can't see our faces, but we're happy that everybody joined and we will fix that. I guess we got to scooch over, brother. I don't know.
What niece is that?
That's the nye.
Oh, okay, okay. What up, baby? How you doing, Sanai?
So she
Yo, big up to Sanai.
And we had a few people that joined, it seems like. So it's exciting. I'm sorry that thank you for letting us know that you could not see our faces. We didn't know that. The studio should fix that and we will make sure
Yeah,
that
man.
we fix that in the end. But we're about to end our live for now. It was wonderful being with you. And brother, I can't wait to see you next week in the Rose Garden.
Hey, I want to give a big up to Halim. It was his birthday this past week or whatnot. So from Fox Chapel, 612 Halim,
Well, if we're giving
sending out a
birthday shout
good
outs, I
back
gotta
out.
give one to Dion Etheridge, who is now
Ha
officially an
ha.
old person in the crew.
Or
Last year in his 20s, so he's gonna be officially the old dude in the club. So
oh yeah, he gonna make it to 30 and over, huh?
I know
Can
that's a
you
different.
believe
It's a
it?
different set of pride. Look, people don't give you the same attention when you get there. So happy birthday
Word
to
up.
Dion as well. All right, brother. I'll see you next week. Bye for
All
now.
right.